Welcome to the Creating Wealth Show with Jason Hartman. You're about to learn a new slant on investing, some exciting techniques, and fresh new approaches to the world's most historically proven asset class that will enable you to create more wealth and freedom than you ever thought possible. Jason is a genuine self-made multimillionaire who's actually been there and done it. He's a successful investor, lender, developer, and entrepreneur who's owned properties in 11 states, had hundreds of tenants, and been involved in thousands of real estate transactions. This program will help you follow in Jason's footsteps on the road to your financial independence day. You really can do it. And now, here's your host, Jason Hartman, with the complete solution for real estate investors.
Welcome to episode 1703. Today we are going to go back in time. Hey, is the time machine working over there? Yep, it's ready. Okay, we got confirmation, folks. We're going back in time. We are going back to last year, right during the thick of it, during the times where we were all uncertain, we were worried, yet there was a voice of reason and a voice that predicted so many things correctly. As others were wondering, they were lost, they were uncertain, one voice was willing to make some predictions. Did they all come true? Pretty much, but you be the judge, because you are going to hear the uncut interview, one of many, from 1 year ago with this unique voice, with a unique take on the markets. So we'll get to that in a moment. But first, the news is out that home prices have now topped $350,000 for the first time. And the subtitle of this article from Rob Quinn, we've had some of his articles on the show before, says, "But with buyers squeezed out, the rate of sales is starting to slow down." Hallelujah! Hallelujah! Yay! I would love the market to slow down a little bit. Jason, be careful what you wish for. Well, I've been wishing for a bit of a slowdown for a while now. It would be nice. You know, the best market is the market at homeostasis. Balance. We need some balance. Yes, we do. Little balance. You know, if you do yoga a lot, like I used to but haven't done lately, you know, this pandemic has not been good for my body. I got to get back in shape, folks. Yes, maybe I'll make a commitment to you. I am going to get back in shape because too much staying at home lounging around. Maybe I'll even go back to the gym. I don't know. Is it safe? Who knows? Who knows if it's safe? Okay, back to the article. The median home price in the U.S. has topped $350,000 for the first time ever. Buyers are being squeezed out. I'm not so sure that's true, just so you know, because according to the HCI, the most credible and reputable economic index ever, that's the Hartman Comparison Index. You know it well, right? Well, you may not know it that well yet, but there's more to come on that one. And that index would tell you that these statements simply aren't true on an overall home price basis and on an overall payment basis, monthly payment basis. But the problem is, it's not really that the home prices haven't gone up in real dollar terms. They've actually come down, but the cost of everything else has gone up. And that's what the comparison index, the HCI, will tell us. It will help clear the clutter. It will help us see the forest through the trees. Is that the saying? Yeah, that's the saying. The forest through the trees. It will help us eliminate our myopia. It will help us see clearly. It will help us stand back from that painting and see the big picture. That's what we need, the big picture, so that we really understand things properly. That's what I aim to do with this great new index. And by the way, we have so many brilliant listeners. Putting together a new housing price index ain't the easiest thing in the world, folks. I gotta hand it to them. I now have more respect for people, even with these bad indexes, like Nobel laureate Robert Shiller, whose index is, well, got a lot of flaws, frankly. I've pointed them out on prior episodes, but I'll mention one big one right now. Yes, I will. And that is that if you look at the Case-Shiller index and you look at the 20 markets, you would be very myopic. You would be completely missing out with about 400 metros in the U.S. and over 3,100 counties, and I don't even know how many cities, and I don't even know how many neighborhoods. I mean, maybe you could narrow it down to like a zip code, and that would be a fair... But the problem is the zip codes, they include many times both sides of the tracks, right? The good side and the bad side. So that wouldn't be right. So you've got all these submarkets, and Case-Shiller is going to tell you, 20 markets, and 15 of those markets are cyclical markets, and only 5 are linear. Wow, you would really be making mistakes making decisions on the Case-Shiller index, I tell you that. But hey, Obama got a Nobel Prize too, and he didn't even do anything. So, how credible can the Nobel Prize be? But hey, if they want to give me one, I'll be very gracious and I'll accept. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And then I'll brag like hell. I'm not getting a Nobel Prize. Don't worry about that. It's never going to happen. Okay, but this index is so much better than the Case-Shiller index. And I'm thinking of all kinds of ways it can be used, and all kinds of ways to slice it and dice it, and all this kind of stuff. So here's my message that I was starting to say. We have so many brilliant listeners. If you are a data scientist, I know some of you out there listening are data scientists. Look, we got people in 189 countries listening right now. No, nobody in North Korea or Cuba. We're not going to get any of those, I guess, but we got most countries covered, right? Data scientist, statistician, economist, any of you wonky people out there who can help us with this index and want to make some money, please reach out. Go to jasonhartman.com/ask. Leave questions, comments, give feedback, criticism, praise, especially praise. We all need a pat on the back when we're not doing it ourselves, right? But if you're a statistician or economist or data scientist and you can help us with this index and you like the idea of the HCI, hey, please reach out because we'll hire you. I know you probably got your full-time gig. You can freelance with us. Help us out with this thing. We need some big thinkers, some great minds to help us with this index, to write white papers on it, to get the word out, to help us engineer it. There's a lot of stuff to do here. Okay, let's go back to the article. So, squeezing buyers out. Well, I think the part where buyers are mostly squeezed out, actually, is in these new ridiculously high credit standards, which are really putting a lot of people in no man's land. We reported on this previously. It's making it really tough for people. The credit standards have just become too onerous, for sure. And the other problem is, when home prices increase so much, remember those down payments are proportional to the price. So if you're putting 10% down on a personal residence, or maybe 20% down, your down payment has increased quite substantially, even though in real dollars and constant dollars, the price of the house is actually cheaper, and in the price of the payment every month is a lot cheaper. So, like everything, it's complicated. Keep peeling those layers of the onion, folks. There's a lot of layers there, but we try to make it understandable. The National Association of Realtors, NAR, says the median price existing home in May was $350,300, a record year-on-year increase of 23.1%. 23.1%. Now, if you want to understand for just a moment how creating fake fiat money, more currency units out of thin air, concentrates wealth in the haves and leaves the have-nots behind, which is totally frickin' unfair. Totally unfair. You can see it right here. Because everybody in the country who owned a home in the past year, just 1 year, If they had 10% equity in that property, say they refinanced it or they only put 10% down or whatever, just for round figures to make it easy, because all you have to do is move a zero one way or the other with 10%, right? Let's just assume they just had 10% equity. Let's make it a $100,000 property. And if it goes up 23.1%, if you have 10% equity, your gross return on investment that year, without including tax benefits, cash flow, anything else, just on appreciation alone, is how much? It's not 23.1%. You need to move the decimal place. It's 231%. 231%! Wow. The rich are getting richer, folks. But you know what? It's not just the rich. They're certainly getting way too rich. It's completely imbalanced. But it's also the middle class, and the upper middle class, and even the lower middle class. You know, it's funny to me how poor immigrants coming to this country tend to appreciate what we've got here a lot more than us non-immigrants, right? Well, I guess I'm kind of an immigrant. I wasn't born here. That's why I can't run for president. But hey, Obama wasn't born here either. So, there you go. All right, enough entertainment, folks. They go out and they save their money. They work hard. They work 2-3 jobs. They're at the low end of the pool. And they go and figure out how to buy a cheap house in a crappy neighborhood. And they go from there. I've helped many of them do it over the years. When I started my real estate career at the ripe old age of 19 years old, well, I was almost 20. Okay, I was almost 20. But that was my clientele. I was helping a lot of Hispanic immigrants buy government repo houses for investment and owner occupancy in the Inland Empire of Southern California, these really crappy areas in Fontana, Rialto, San Bernardino. I mean, some of these areas were quite literally war zones. I mean, when I think about some of the images that are still emblazoned in my mind, emblazoned in my memory, I really think, wow, I can't believe that I wasn't, murdered or something in those neighborhoods. They're pretty bad. I mean, burnt out houses, just unbelievable. And I was selling these things. And a few years go by, and these people kept working hard, making their mortgage payments, fixing the houses up. And in a couple of years, they'd call me and they'd say, hey, we want to buy another. We want to buy a couple more of these. We got some relatives. We got some more money together. And suddenly, this unassuming immigrant has got, 6-7 houses. They appreciate it. But some of us, that look at luxury as the lull to apathy. When people have it too easy, and folks, this is why you shouldn't spoil your kids, although you're probably not going to listen to me and you're going to do it anyway. They appreciate it. They go for it. They take advantage of the opportunity. They delay gratification. Now, not all of them. There's a lot of complete losers in every segment of the population, of course, who's into instant gratification. But some of them, and look at some people in every walk of life, right? They delay gratification, they build something for the future, and that is the mark of intelligence and maturity, the willingness to delay gratification for a bigger long-term future. That is it. Think about that. If you owned a house in the past year, on average, if you had 10% equity in that house, your return on investment on simply one dimension of this beautiful, gorgeous, stunning, spectacular. Hey, remember that blog post I did years ago it's on jasonhartman.com. You can find it. It's hilarious. I many times wonder what became of these people. That blog post on the Craigslist gold digger. It was a famous story, it was all over the internet maybe 12 years ago. She said she was spectacularly beautiful. That's the way she described herself at age 25. Now she's 37. I just wonder what became of her. She said she couldn't date a guy who made less than $500,000 a year. So adjust that for inflation, 12 years later, what is that today? I don't know exactly, but anyway, you can do that because you'll go find an inflation calculator and figure it out. What's that about? Maybe $800,000-$900,000 today? something like that on the official stats. Well, maybe it's less than that. I don't know. I don't have the calculator in front of me. But on the real inflation numbers, it's a lot more than that. That J.P. Morgan guy gave her a whole lesson in economics. It's hilarious, right? But this beautiful, gorgeous, stunning, spectacularly beautiful, multi-dimensional asset class that we all love, income property, the most historically proven asset class in the world, the people that owned it last year, if they had 10% equity a year ago, they made a 231% return on investment, just on average, by these stats that I'm looking at right here in this article. Wow. Don't wait to buy real estate. Buy real estate, and then wait. All right. So, we've been talking about the last year, looking at these numbers, these incredible numbers. So now, let's go back approximately a year ago, to an interview I did where I was interviewed by Casey, he's a financial advisor, has a non-real estate show, but he interviewed me. See what you think of my interview. We didn't cut anything out, in terms of any of the content. It's all there. So, was I right? Was I wrong? What's my score? Score of 1 to 10. What do I get? Let's listen in. Here we go.
Jason, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Casey. Great to be here.
Well, it's awesome to have our first real estate expert here on the show, among many other things that you do. And I'm really looking forward to diving into not just what's going on with real estate and how it pertains to retirement, but also what's going on right now. I'm interviewing you right now at the beginning of April 2020. So there's a lot going on out there in the market, a lot going on out there in coronavirus. And I see you're practicing a little social distancing yourself.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's this is a good time to be a loner with OCD. I hate to say that, but it's a really crazy time in history. I never thought I'd live through anything like this. You probably didn't either. Probably nobody in your audience did, unless they were alive in 1918 during the Spanish flu. And I think this will create profound changes in the world that will last an entire generation. And I'm not talking about the virus itself, that I do think this will be a very bad month, but the memory of it will last a generation. And the impact on the economy and the way we do things and our behavior and how that impacts the economy, how it impacts real estate is going to be profoundly significant. And there are a lot of things that people need to do to reposition their portfolio, to really reposition their thinking about their investments, about their retirement, about where they live, how they live. This is a big deal. I don't want to understate it. And when I say that, by the way, I don't say that in the sense that I'm panicking. I think largely the reaction from the Federal Reserve and the government and other central banks and other governments around the world, in some ways, I think their reaction is much bigger than the problem. But at the same time, I do think there are profound lasting effects that will be with us, and we need to adapt to them. And there are many silver linings in the cloud, by the way. There are many good things that are already coming out of this and will continue to come out of it. So there's so much to talk about.
What do you think today is, where do you see the biggest opportunities in the real estate market today?
Well, I think, like I've said, I think this is a generational shift. I think it's a big deal. And as soon as the pandemic part of this blows over and the quarantines end, as soon as that happens, we are going to start to see a mass migration out of high-density living environments. And remember, when we talk about high density, we're not just talking about, someone living in a high-rise apartment building or high-rise condo. That's one component of it. But when you come out of your home, say you don't touch the elevator button, say you ride in the elevator alone, and say the elevator is disinfected all the time, right? Say your building is very clean, and that's all great. But what happens when you get out of your house, on the street scene, at the coffee shop, at shopping environments, and eventually when they come back, and it's going to take a while, restaurants, bars, movie theaters, concerts, things like that, plays, Broadway, everything like that. When that eventually comes back, maybe with people sitting in every other seat, who knows what this will be. It's going to be a different world. It really is. We've got to think about density and social distancing. This is the new thing that everybody is going to be thinking about. And I think we are going to see a huge hit to real estate markets like New York City, downtown LA, or any part of LA where I grew up that is highly dense. Obviously, the Bay Area, San Francisco, Seattle, Portland, San Diego, Miami, Boston, Washington, D.C., downtown Chicago. I think that people are really going to make an escape from these types of environments, and there's going to be a mass migration toward suburban living. You know, when you look around the world, Casey, America is very unique in the concept of suburbia. That is a uniquely American concept. Around the world, you know, and I've been to 87 countries. I was born in Europe. You know, it's kind of weird now that I have zero travel plans. I don't think that's happened in 20 years for me, but I usually go to Europe a couple of times a year, spend maybe a month there every summer or so. European cities, Asian cities, cities around the world are dense, okay? They're densely populated. This is a big change. In terms of the U.S. real estate market, I think we are going to see something that I predicted maybe 8 to 10 years ago that I call the rise of suburbia. Now, the reason I predicted it back then had nothing to do with pandemic viruses. I wasn't thinking of that. What I was thinking of at the time I made that prediction is the autonomous vehicle and the self-driving car. And I think that is going to lead to the rise of suburbia because location, you know, if you look at real estate throughout history, I mean, even back to the time that we were living in caves, real estate has always been valued on three basic concepts. That's, you know, kind of a cliche: location, location, and location. And that's what makes high density cities so expensive to live in. You know, New York City is expensive because of density and demand and high paying jobs. Well, guess what? A lot of us have now realized that in terms of high paying jobs and location and also universities and the tuitions they charge, that as that old story, the emperor has no clothes. And what I mean by that is that now people are realizing, thankfully, that they can work remotely. A lot of people did before, but now they really get it. And people are adapting. You know, necessity is the mother of invention, as the old saying goes. And people are pretty adaptable. They're pretty good at adapting. And so are free market companies. Capitalism is super adaptive, more than any other system. And the late economist Joseph Schumpeter years ago coined the term creative destruction. And so we're seeing a creative destruction happening just in the past month of universities that have adapted and are telling everybody, go learn online. Grade school, go learn online, stay at home. And the home is becoming the center of the universe. And as this happens, the company is telling people to work at home. People are getting better at using remote technology like we're using right now. And there are all sorts of new innovations that are being pushed forward faster and faster. Lots of companies, interestingly, are retooling their plants. You know, alcohol distilleries are making hand sanitizer. Right. I think GM and GE are both making ventilators. Okay, I think both of them actually. Maybe I'm confusing that. All sorts of companies that made clothing are now making face masks. So the world is just radically changing and adapting very quickly. And some of this adaptation in terms of the real estate market are that we are moving more and more toward a frictionless real estate market where people are more and more willing to do things virtually. When I started in the business I'm in now, that, you know, people can find out more about at jasonhartman.com or on my podcast, The Creating Wealth Show, I got into this business, this angle on real estate back in 2004, 16 years ago. And back then, the idea of people buying properties around the country, buying properties they had never seen in person or investing remotely was sort of a radical idea. And a lot of people did it. And, you know, my business was very successful as it launched back in 2004. But now it's become widely accepted and much more friction-free. It's going to make it easier for investors because now renters are more willing to rent properties virtually. They're more willing to sign docs using online electronic signing platforms. Just a lot of stuff is becoming much easier and much more friction-free, which is beautiful for investors. And the rise of suburbia, a big, big mega trend in real estate. And we've been recommending people invest in suburban real estate for 16 years. Yeah. We've never liked high density markets. So I think that's just naturally going to be a very good thing for us.
So what's this timeline look like? If we find ourselves here today, do we go ahead and say, okay, suburbia is going to be a great opportunity. Let's go ahead and get ahead of it. Are we buying into suburbia at a good time today, or are there going to be better opportunities in the future as we see, say, potentially recession go on? We see individuals that are potentially losing their jobs and going back to the 2008 period of time. Are people going to lose their homes? Are people going to be turning their homes over to the banks taking over? How are the opportunities going to evolve? Because I'm talking to people right now, they're saying, yeah, I would like to get into the real estate market right now. I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities if we just sit and wait for those opportunities to rise. How do you see this evolving over time?
The right answer is I don't know. Okay. So none of us know. We're in uncharted territory. We have never seen this before. And look, for all the people who think they can outwit the stock market or the real estate market or whatever, look at Mr. Market has a certain amount of wisdom that no one person has. And if you don't believe that, just look at the powers that be who have much more information than we do. And those would be the central banks. The Federal Reserve and the government have vastly more information than any person listening, including me or you or anybody, right, has. They have more information, and they can't predict the cycle, and they control part of it, also, and they don't know. Nobody really knows. But
that makes me think about your valuation discussion. You say, well, there is no such thing as the U.S. real estate market. And so does that mean, today there's great opportunities and tomorrow there'll be great opportunities, and we just have to look for them?
Yeah. So, that's why I always try to look at the macroeconomic angle on things, because when you look at macro, generally speaking, you can predict macro trends. Can I predict day by day or next month? No, but I just know for sure that there is going to be a mass migration out of high density living environments to lower density living environments. Okay. I can say that with certainty, and I think everyone listening probably believes that too. Will there be a recession? We're already in a recession. Will it be ugly? God, yes. This is mind-boggling what's going on. The cover of The Economist magazine has a picture of the Earth from outer space with a sign that says closed on it. You can't shut down the global economy and expect not to create a recession or a depression. This is going to be just a crazy time. But the difference is that this did not happen because of ridiculous lending standards. It did not happen. The banks have been really conservative, at least in real estate financing, coming out of the Great Recession. This is not a long-term problem. Now, I want to couch that in this. I think every economy on earth is pretty much built on a house of cards. It's all smoke and mirrors, okay? So knowing that that's the environment we're playing in, that every economy is sort of built on this house of cards, if you will. Okay, that's just every economy. The question we have to ask ourselves is, compared to what? Okay, if people, I love these idiots that are out there predicting the collapse of America. Well, compared to what? I mean, seriously, the U.S. has the biggest economy in the world. It has the biggest military in the world. It has the reserve currency of the world. And guess what else? It has the biggest brand name in the world. Everybody wants to come to America. Okay, bash it all you want. Say that the dollar is fiat money and it's not backed by anything. You're wrong. The dollar is backed by aircraft carriers and missiles. When you get down to it at the end of the day, that's how the U.S. will continue to maintain reserve currency status, by the ability to inflict force and project power. It's ugly, but it's the way of the world. Okay? So the U.S. is in a much better position than other countries, dramatically better. okay? And the U.S. real estate market will definitely experience hardship, but so will everybody else, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, just as an aside, one of the really good things that is coming out of this it just makes me feel good, because this is a virus that doesn't discriminate. I mean, it does in terms of it affects older people more harshly. It affects men more harshly. Coronavirus kills men dramatically more than it kills women, by the way. A lot of people, that's not very well publicized, probably for some silly political correctness reason. So it does discriminate a little bit, but it doesn't really discriminate between borders. And one of the silver linings that's coming out of this is I think this will lead to much greater global cooperation between nations. We are realizing as the human race that we've got to work together. No country can go it alone here, okay? But, that said, America still has some tremendous advantages. So it's kind of a timing the market question. And I don't believe you can time the market. The problem is if one tries to sit out and say, okay, the deals are going to get better, you might be right. Okay, you might be right. I don't know. Certainly, when you look at the three different kinds of real estate markets in the world, linear, cyclical, and hybrid markets, those cyclical markets, and those are the markets where if you're looking at a graph, they have tremendous, glorious highs and really ugly lows. They thrive and then they crash and burn. Those are markets that get all the publicity around the world. There are places like the West Coast of the U.S., San Diego, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Seattle, Vancouver, Canada, the West Coast, up out of the U.S. even. South Florida, Miami, the expensive northeastern markets, Washington, D.C., New York, Boston, markets like that. Around the world, there are markets like Dubai, Paris, London, Hong Kong. Okay, these are markets that have really high prices. They appreciate radically in the good times, and they crash and burn in the bad times. Those markets are going to suffer greatly. So when you hear someone talk about the real estate market, that's what they're talking about. When you hear these sound bites on the news, they're not talking about Atlanta, Ocala, Florida, Memphis, Tennessee, Jacksonville, Florida. They're not talking about Houston or Dallas. They're not talking about Little Rock, Arkansas. They're not talking about
Gary, Indiana.
Yeah, well,
Marylville.
Gary, Indiana, you might not want to talk about that one at all. But
I saw you had a lot of properties in northern Indiana there.
Yeah, but Gary is, not one of the markets we totally recommend. Okay, I mean, if you're a real bottom feeder type of landlord, sure, you can make money in those types of places. Same with Detroit. We've never recommended Detroit. Same kind of reason. But, there are some exceptions, and people you can make money in any area of real estate. I'm just saying that my plan is I think people should buy good quality properties in good markets, and they should buy necessity housing. Okay. When times get hard, people need shelter. We all now know through this pandemic that the home is the center of the universe. Not an office building, not a retail center, the home. That's where everybody's been told to go and stay, at home, okay? And guess what? People now realize, if they've got a roommate and they live in a 2-bedroom place, you know what? Someone's got to move. My company told me I got to work at home. I need that spare bedroom now. And maybe my company gave me an extra $200-300 a month to work at home as an allowance. And I got to set up a home office. So someone's got to move. Guess what just happened? We just doubled the demand for housing. Double. Now, another funny thing, a lot of people have talked about all these couples that are at home quarantined with nothing to do, and that there might be a coronavirus baby boom in 9 months. Okay. So if that's true, if people are making love, right, then they've got to get a bigger house. So we've increased the demand for housing. If both of those people in that couple have been told to work at home and the kids have been told to study at home, and there's a couple and 2 kids, think about how much more housing you need now, more space. What if people are fighting at home and they're arguing and they're just at each other's throats, and they realized, they never spent this much time with their significant other. I can't stand you. After this is over, I'm getting out. And the divorce rate goes up. Double the demand for housing. Yeah. Okay. So necessity housing, the demand is going to increase dramatically. necessity housing in suburban markets.
Well, then I just
Massive
want to
increase
get
in
a little
demand.
deeper into that, clarify what we're talking about, because people might be, I know I've got families that are looking at flipping homes, or they already do flip homes. So
Yeah.
then they've got long-term rentals, we've got short-term rentals, we've got vacation rentals.
Yep. I can talk about the short term. I've made some good predictions on that too. Go
Where
ahead.
in the market is that opportunity? Long-term, short-term, vacation rentals, apartment buildings. Can we drill down a little bit there?
Sure. So first off, I think at least this year, of course, and maybe next year, the global economy is going to get smaller. It is going to shrink. And whether that means a technical recession or not, I don't know. Well, it means certainly this quarter or next quarter we have a recession. There's no question about that. Anybody who says different is they're looking at the world through rose-colored glasses. They're smoking something because they're just wrong. Okay, we're having a recession. But the recession could end pretty quickly, the technical recession. But many small businesses will go out of business. The economy will be smaller. And so that means that as real estate investors, we want to catch people moving down and provide housing to them. The discretionary income of going on vacation is that market's going to get a lot smaller. It's going to shrink. Now, in terms of the short-term rental or Airbnb market, people will still take vacations, and a lot of their options are going to evaporate either by choice or by economic reality. Examples. Many cruise lines will go out of business. And by the way, as an aside, and I'm not being political here, I'm just being accurate, okay? I got to hand it to the Trump administration, because when the cruise lines came to them and said, we need a bailout, their response was, look, domesticate your companies in the U.S., hire U.S. workers, follow U.S. labor laws, and pay into the system, and then we'll consider a bailout. You've been avoiding taxes or evading taxes for years by domesticating elsewhere and getting all the big American consumer market as your customers. You have the best of both worlds. That's a scam. You want to bail out, pay into the system. So we'll see how that works out. Maybe they'll domesticate in the U.S. now. And, like Carnival Cruise Line, the biggest one in the world that owns many other cruise lines. And maybe they'll work out some kind of bailout. So the cruise business will definitely shrink. No question. Long distance vacation market will definitely shrink. Even if it all comes back, a lot less people will want to fly. They're just going to be concerned about it. They're going to, you get in a little aluminum tube in the air and you have no social distancing opportunity. So it's risky. And there will be other viruses after this one. So when you can provide a short-term rental property that people can drive to, and it's in a suburban type of setting, not a high-rise condo, not requiring flying, people will still take vacations. And because the number of vacation options has compressed and it has shrunken, we have one short-term rental market that we offer, St. Augustine, Florida. And it's perfect. Our clients that have those short-term rental properties there are doing pretty well. They've had a cancellation here or there. And interestingly, some of the bookings are changing in character, where they have a fewer number of bookings, but longer bookings, because people want to escape the higher density cities. So for example, someone coming to St. Augustine, Florida for a short-term rental vacation would come possibly from a higher density area of Atlanta or Orlando, and they can easily drive to that, or many other areas as well, right? But if you've got a short-term rental property in a high-rise or in any high-density type of environment, especially one that requires people to usually fly to it rather than drive to it, that's a problem. That's not going to do well.
Yeah. So we're seeing, and I'm glad you said that, we've got a rental property just outside of Traverse City in Michigan, vacation rental.
Yeah, that's probably pretty good.
Short-term vacation rental, people drive there, and we're continuing to stay booked the entire year.
Yeah.
And so I really like to hear that for that reason. And I also think it's a neat opportunity for retirees when they're looking for a second home. That can present a way to have that second home and not have it really eat too much into your expenses, maybe even provide additional revenue.
I think you're right. I think that's good. Your short-term rental in Traverse City, by the way, the other thing I'd say about that is the high end of the short-term rental market will also suffer because people are going to be more conservative. I think the mindset is going to be toward a bit of a simpler existence after this. I think people are going to be more grateful for what they have, and that's a good thing in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
I think the extravagance and the super high-end, ultra-luxury short-term rentals are also going to suffer, even if you could drive to them. Okay?
Sure. Yeah. So we see that's one of the opportunities, these short-term vacation rentals you can drive to. And then it sounds like your main business and what you really like is these suburban areas where you've got family housing.
Right.
It's not high end, maybe it's lower end, but you're buying a larger portfolio of these homes to generate revenue.
Yeah.
Is that what I'm hearing?
Absolutely. And, just as an aside, I think the short-term rental thing is fine given everything I said, but that's not our main thing. Remember, vacation is always optional, and in tough economic times, people just aren't going to vacation, or not as much, right? So that market will contract. So, the core strategy is buy inexpensive, bread and butter, necessity housing as long-term rentals in good linear markets. Now, what do I mean by linear? Earlier, I explained cyclical. So remember that graph we talked about, just helping people visualize there's a graph, right? The cyclical market is up and then it's down. It has glorious highs and ugly lows. So those are all the west coast of the U.S., all the trophy cities around the world that I mentioned. And then the linear market are those boring markets you don't hear about in the news. Little Rock, Arkansas, Memphis, Atlanta, Ocala, Florida, Jacksonville, Florida, and many others around the country that you could see at jasonhartman.com, okay? Mm-hmm. Those properties make sense from day one from a cash flow perspective. And they're going to sail through this pretty darn well, I think. Now, interestingly, I think this is going to lead to some obviously new government programs. There's a program that you probably know about called Section 8, which is a rental housing assistance program for people that's been around for many, many years, decades. I mean, when I was growing up, my mom had some Section 8 rentals. And that's where the government pays either part or all of the rent to the landlord. I think we're going to see a dramatic expansion in rental assistance. I think we may actually see a nationwide rental assistance program that a lot of people are eligible for. And I think the economy is going to become much more government-centered and much more socialist, whether we like it or not. It's the way it's going.
If someone's listening in, they're saying, that makes sense to me. I'd like to get into the rental market, and maybe they want to jump on this. I just want to, you've been through a couple different recessions in this market.
Oh, not just a couple, a few.
I've
been around a while. Yeah.
I've seen people lose a lot of money in real estate.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen people make a lot of mistakes. So if they're going to go down this road as we close here, what are some of the biggest things they need to look out for, especially those close to retirement or in retirement? If they want to go this route, they want to take advantage of an opportunity. Where have you seen people go wrong? What should they be watching out for?
The simplest thing I can say is, number one, I got a great free video for your listeners, and it's just on the front page of my website, jasonhartman.com. It's 27 minutes long. It's totally free. If you simply watch that one video, if there's nothing else you do to learn about real estate investing, just watch that one simple video that teaches people how to analyze a real estate deal. It's totally free, jasonhartman.com. Just watch that one 27-minute video, and it will really, really help. But barring that, even faster, as a rule of thumb, look at good rent-to-value ratios, or otherwise known as RV ratios. And if you can get somewhere in the neighborhood of 1% of the value of the property every month, you're going to do pretty well, okay? What that means is that if you're looking at a $100,000 property and that'll rent for close to $1,000 a month, it's very hard to get hurt on that deal. I mean, yes, other things can go wrong. Life is complicated, of course. There's no foolproof investment, but you're going to do pretty well if you get 1% per month, because you're going to be able to hold on to that property during bad times, and you're going to thrive during good times. The place people get hurt is they buy these crazy properties in California or, some of these cyclical market cities that the properties are too expensive and the rent to value ratios never worked. I have something I call the 10 commandments of successful investing. Commandment number 5 is thou shalt not gamble. Thou shalt not gamble. And, I just believe in being a conservative, prudent investor. And when I say not gamble, I mean that the property must make sense the day you buy it or you don't buy it. And what does making sense mean? It means it has a good rent-to-value ratio and everything else explained in the 27-minute video that's free on my website. But rent-to-value ratio, if you just get that, that's a good safeguard. Okay. People do these crazy properties that are, it's a $500,000 property and it rents for $2,500 a month. Don't do those deals like that. They're very risky. In the short-term rental market, people make mistakes all the time because they buy these highfalutin properties and they think they can rent them all as a short-term rental. Well, guess what? That market's going to contract, just like we talked about a few minutes ago. So you'll never lose if you have the more basic necessity product in the marketplace. That will always be in demand. Do people like champagne and caviar? Sure, but it's not necessary to survive. What's necessary to survive is meat and potatoes, okay? So that's the kind of rental property you should be thinking about.
Thank you so much for listening. Please be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss any episodes. Be sure to check out the show's specific website and our general website, hartmanmedia.com, for appropriate disclaimers and terms of service. Remember that guest opinions are their own, and if you require specific legal or tax advice or advice in any other specialized area, please consult an appropriate professional. And we also very much appreciate you reviewing the show. Please go to iTunes or Stitcher Radio or whatever platform you're using and write a review for the show. We would very much appreciate that. And be sure to make it official and subscribe so you do not miss any episodes. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode.